Hello everyone, it's Karen at the Cool Tools Studio. I'm here today to show how easy it is to make bronze cuffs using cuff bracelet rolling frames and templates. In today's video, I'm going to cover two simple projects, a textured cuff, and then a textured cuff that's kind of layered and has a little bit of an edge to it. I'm also going to be covering how to fire base metal cuffs in this video. Let's get started by taking a look at what you need to make these cuffs. As I'm going through these, if you see anything that you need to add to your collection, there will be a link to purchase these items in the description below. For today's project, I have a dish for water and a brush, a clay board, an extra clay surface, an ultra clay pick, and cuff bracelet rolling frames. I'm working with a wonder roller, a cuff bracelet mandrel, and some cool slip. I'm using Aureus Bright Bronze Clay, and these cuff bracelets use anywhere between 40 to 50 grams of clay, but you need some extra when rolling and working, so I'm working with 100 grams of clay. You need some sanding pads, a cuff bracelet template, and then some textures of your choice. Today I'm working with a vice versa texture tile and a long mega texture tile. I'm going to start off by demonstrating just the simple, straightforward textured cuff, and for that I'm going to roll my clay to 5 cards and then texture down to 4 cards. So since I'm trying to make a long form and I want it to be about as wide as this, I'm kind of pre-rolling my clay into a sort of a log and then pressing it down a bit before I start rolling it to elongate it. And I did prep my work surface with a little bit of cool slip. I just spritzed that on prior to getting started here. And I'm just rolling my clay to 5 cards thick. And then at this point, I'm just taking my clay off to the side, get it out of the way here, use my extra work surface. And then for texturing down, I'm going to again apply some cool slip to my texture. And I'll be rolling to 4 cards thickness this time. And these rolling frames really are perfect for this project because they're the right length and they're not so wide that you have to use like a giant roller. Since I know I'm going to be rolling this way and my clay is going to be growing and stretching as I roll, I kind of start it closer to this back edge here. And I'm just going to do one even straightforward roll. So there's my beautiful texture. And then I also like to cut on these extra clay surfaces to protect the surface that I roll on so it doesn't get all scratched up. And these cuff templates are great because they have lots of different sizes that you can choose from. And since I have a small wrist, I'm going with the smaller option. I always want to make sure that I'm applying a little bit of pressure on my template so it's not going to scoot around while I'm cutting, but I'm not going to be pushing down so hard that I'm going to squish my texture there. You just drag along that edge. So at this point I'm going to remove and I'm going to connect the little gaps here, just kind of freehand. If you accidentally cut a little bit in or out, you can just sand that away once your clay has dried. So I'm taking my extra clay away at this point. Save that for the next project. And then I'm ready to wrap it around the bracelet mandrel. These tapered bracelet mandrels are great because as your clay dries, it's going to shrink a little bit. So I'll usually start my bracelet kind of up high, and then once it's about looking a little bit dry, I'd say about like 70 or 60% dry, I'll scoot it down a little bit. Because if you just leave it to dry completely against a form like this, it could crack along your edges a little bit if you don't scoot it down as it dries. So as my piece dries on this, I'll usually just take 2 books or something and support one side and the other side and just leave it to dry like this. Then once it's dry, you're ready to refine. So now we're moving on to the layered cuff, and for that I do 4 cards thickness for the back. And again, starting off with a little bit of cool slip on my work surface. That's enough for my surface and my roller. Starting off with a little log of clay. Kind of scoot it some. And I'm just shooting for a long strip of clay that will give me enough room to accommodate my cuff form. And I'm going to be cutting the back layer here. And I just think the layered kind of just adds a little bit more of a finished look to these pieces. So I think it's worth the extra time. And for these, again, these templates are great because they have lots of different sizes. I'll usually use like the outside and for the back layer, and then the inside shape for the front layer. So if you're doing a larger one for your back layer there, I would cut along this edge, and then when you go to do the texture that's going on top, you use the smaller inside edge. So again, I'm making a 7-inch cuff today. Connecting the edges. Removing my excess, and now I'm going to be rolling the sheet that I'm going to layer on top. So I'm moving this off to the side to keep it safe. And for this front layer, I'm going to be starting at 4 and texturing down to 3 cards thickness. So there's probably enough cool slip left on my work surface from that initial roll that I did. So for this bracelet, I'm going to be working with one of the vice versa tiles. And I really like these because they've got 2 different versions of the same pattern. Today I'm going to be working with the slightly deeper pattern. And I'm rolling down to 3 cards thickness. I'm going to be starting my clay closer to me because I know it's going to grow that way as I roll. And I'm just going to roll in 1, solid, push that direction. And there are going to be some spots that are a little bit thinner, but it's going to be okay because it's going to be layered up on a back piece of clay there. So that looks great. And now I'm ready to cut out the slightly smaller cuff to layer on top of this one. If you wanted a thicker border, you could use this for your inside edge and this for your outside edge. It's all kind of up to you. Just the goal is to have a larger piece and then a smaller piece to layer on top of it. So since I did this for my outside, I'm going to do this for my inside. And again, the transparency of these templates is really nice for kind of scooting it around and seeing what you would like. And then I'm just dragging along that edge. And once again, saving this for another project. When I'm joining these 2 layers, I just use water. With this much surface area for your connection, as long as you make sure you do a good job wetting every point of contact, you don't need to use slip or paste or anything like that, as that could actually kind of add some high and low areas and some inconsistency to the look. So I'm just thoroughly wetting my back piece here. Kind of stirring up a little bit of a slurry on this surface instead of adding paste to it. So this is the trickiest part of the process. It's just kind of eyeballing the overlap and kind of picking it up and scooting it. And placing it generally where you would like it. And this clay is very elastic. It has a very long working time, so I'm not worried about it drying out and cracking on me as I'm doing these kind of adjustments and back and forth kind of fussing. And once you're happy with how things are looking, just like before, you're going to take it to your tapered mandrel. And like I said, I started a little bit higher, and then as it dries, I'll scoot it down some so it doesn't crack as it dries. Once your cuffs have completely dried, you're ready to refine them. And it's pretty simple. Because bronze is a little bit tougher, I usually start off with fine. And I'm kind of looking for where I connected from my template, where it kind of had that area where it was a break and I had to eyeball it and connect. And I'm going to be using the fine to do some shaping. I'm just trying to smooth out that transition, and by removing material on either side of that low area, it will be evened up and not noticeable anymore. And then I'll just kind of keep going around the edge to kind of smooth that out. But overall, there isn't too much you have to do. Just cleaning up this outside edge. Here's another spot where I kind of connected and there's a bit of a divot. Sometimes you can feel things a little bit better than you can see, or if you tilt it up on this side, you can kind of see that that hasn't been sanded yet. It's a little darker. That's another way to kind of check for what needs extra refining. And I'm just smoothing that out. Another thing I like to do with my cuffs is, instead of having a sharp inside edge, I'll take my fine and just really quickly take down that inside edge. And that just makes the cuffs a little bit more comfortable to wear. And usually with bronze, I'll only go ahead and sand down to ultrafine. You don't really have to take it all the way down to microfine to have good results. So I'm just smoothing out the scratches that I made with my fine, with my superfine, and my ultrafine. And then this project's going to go pretty much the same way. The only thing extra about it is I kind of take my sanding pad and put it up on its side to address evening out the edge on the top layer. And again, that's mostly just where there was that break in the template. I'm kind of evening that out. And when I'm happy with that, I'm going to move to my lower layer as well. When your cup is refined, you're ready to fire. For firing Aureus Bright Bronze and a lot of base metal clays, you're going to be using a two-phase firing. And the second phase is done inside carbon. So I've got a stainless steel firing box here, and the carbon that I put inside of it has been primed. So you'll see that there's a little notice on the top of the carbon here. And to prepare the carbon for use, you want to fire it inside the stainless steel container with the lid for 30 minutes at 1650. And that's just going to prep and prime the carbon. Some clays it'll stick to if it's not primed first, but just to be safe, you want to prime your new carbon. And once you've primed it, for the first phase, it says fire on an open wire rack, full ramp to 1650 Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. And so it's not buried for the first phase. And instead of putting it on a wire rack for something like this where it's big and I'm afraid I might jostle it in between the two phases, you can just set it directly on top of an inch or so of carbon already inside the stainless steel firing container. So I would put this inside my kiln on top of stilts, that way it's elevated off of the kiln floor, and I'm going to do the full ramp to 650 for 30 minutes hold. At that point, your bracelet will be kind of dark because all the binders have burned off, and then you're going to want to take additional primed coconut carbon and pour it on over top until your cuff is buried. So my piece is buried with an inch of carbon over the top of my piece. And another thing to note, when you are pouring the carbon, you don't want to inhale the dust of it or anything, so please wear a dust mask and some safety glasses to keep the particles out of your eyes as well. So now I'm ready to put this back into my kiln and do a full ramp to 1400 degrees and hold it for 2 hours. Once your cuffs have fired, if you need to do any straightening out or adjusting of the form, you can put it back onto the mandrel that you laid your clay over and use a rawhide mallet to kind of tap it and correct the shape. But for the most part, I didn't have too much distortion in my pieces. So you can finish these however you'd like. I had a pretty interesting kiln patina on this piece. You can see there's some reds and some blues, and I liked that. So I left this piece as it was, and then just used a white 3M radial bristle brush and kind of took the patina from the kiln off the high areas and left it as was. And this piece is just a little bit more shiny than this one because I tumbled this piece as well. These cups are a great beginner project. They're really simple to make, but the finished bracelet looks great every time. I hope you give them a try. Thanks for watching.